'cause you preceded me. Ah, da, 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 yeah, you know it. Ah, da, 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 yeah, you know it. Yeah, you know it. Yeah, you know it. Ah, da, 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 yeah, you know it. I don't got it all planned out, but you know I just watch it all pan out, 'cause I know that you know, covered in this life until forever. I don't got it all planned out, but you know I just watch it all pan out, 'cause I know that you know, covered in this life until forever. I'm coming back to the beginning. I'm coming back to you. Where there was nothing in between us, and nothing cared from you. I open up my hands, you open up my eyes, I let go. All I am is yours. You can have my heart, you can have my mind, you can have my love. All I am is yours. You can have my heart, you can have my mind, you can have my love. All I am is yours. I'm breathing deeper than I ever have before. Believing you for something better than all I've ever known. I open up my hands, you open up my eyes, and I let go. All I am is yours. You can have my heart, you can have my mind, you can have my love. All I am is yours. You can have my heart, you can have my mind, you can have my love. I'm giving up my glory, I'm laying down my longing, surrendering my story to you. I'm trading my ambition for the beauty of your kingdom. Yeah, I lose it all to find it in you. All I am is yours. You can have my heart, you can have my mind, you can have my love. All I am is yours. You can have my heart, you can have my mind, you can have my love. I'm giving up my glory, and I'm laying down my longing, surrendering my story to you. I'm trading my ambition for the beauty of your kingdom. Yeah, I lose it all to find it in.
Can I see your phone real quick? Do you have the Bible app? Oh, there it goes. That's coming up now. My phone was not changing. Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Swell. So I'm excited because we're continuing the series that we've been doing called Made Brand New. My name is Kim Ballard Jr. I'm the pastor here at Encounter Community Church and just wanted to welcome you this morning. And I just want to hit a few announcements for things that are going on. We are continuing our food drive. So although we said last week was the last week, we're going to continue it. So if you have food that you want to bring for that, please continue to do so. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to build up what we have. And then once we're at a point where it feels like we can supply about 20 to 30 bags, we're going to do another giveaway to the community. So please, bring in whatever it is that you have to contribute for that. And again, if you're looking for the list, it will be on our Bible app. And so the best way to find that is next to me, there's going to be a QR code that will pop up if you're watching on the live stream. It's also on the screen for those of you that are here. And then you also should have gotten a card that has it on there as well. But what you can do is you can follow that, and then on there, it will give you a list of the things that we are collecting, as well as you can go to our website and you can find it there. On May the 11th, we are going to be doing our mobile food bank. And so again, that's just a way for us to be able to serve and meet the needs of the hungry in our community as well. So if you're hungry or know someone who else is hungry, come for that on May the 11th. It goes from 9 a.m. till 11 a.m. We're just encouraging people to make sure you bring dollies or wagons or those kind of things, because what we pass out are big bulk items for people to be able to take home and have some groceries. And then if you want to volunteer for that, just show up at 8 a.m. that morning, and you can volunteer with us for that as well. On May the 22nd, we are going to have our town hall meeting. And basically what we're going to do there is we're going to be talking about our new budget and voting on our new budget for next year, which is already crazy that it's already here. We're already like close to June. But we'll be voting on that, as well as talking about our church and direction for our church as well. So if you are a member of Encounter, please make it a plan to be there with us on that day. So that's May the 22nd. The Zoom meeting and ID is all available for that as well. It'll be done on Zoom. With the information for that will be available as well. So love to have you join us for that. Again, if you are a member of Encounter, just a great way to find out the things that are happening here. And then finally, one of the things I do want to encourage us to be praying for is, you guys, Ariel has been such a blessing to us, and we are so grateful for her. And for those of you that may not know, her family is just going through some challenges, and they really need her to be around more often. And so she is making a commitment to do that. But in doing so, that means she has to fear for Sundays. So the result is that means that she's not going to be leading worship for us. And so this month is going to be her last month with us. So please be praying, because we've been trying to find someone for several months, and just the door hasn't opened yet. So if you know of anyone that leads worship that's talented, let me add that part on. If you know of anyone that leads worship that is talented, please connect them with me so that we can have the opportunity to maybe go through the process, and maybe they'll become a part of the team here at Encounter as well. But continue praying for us in that process. Be praying for Ariel. And Ariel, we are so grateful for you. And I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to make you cry before you come on stage and you have to sing. So with that in mind, let me go ahead and just pray. Father, we thank you. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for your power and your presence and the way that you have made your name known in our lives. Lord, we just hand this morning over to you. And we just pray that you would be with us in this service, and also just help us to be able to reconnect with you and who you are, and living the life that you've ultimately called us to live. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Good morning, church. I would just like to invite you guys to stand and worship with us. clouds. He's coming on the clouds. Kings and kingdoms will bow down. And every chain will break as broken hearts declare his praise. For who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before him. Our God is the Lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains. And every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Oh, sing so open. So open up the gates, make way before the King of Kings. The God who comes to save is here to set the captives free. Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. Every knee will bow before him. Our God is a lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks chains. And every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Sing out, who can stop? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord? Sing that out again. Who can stop? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord Almighty? Who can stop the Lord? Our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah. He's roaring with power and fighting our battles. And every knee will bow before him. Our God is a lamb that was slain for the sins of the world. His blood breaks the chains. And every knee will bow before the Lion and the Lamb. Oh, every knee will bow before him. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh,
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure. How great the pain of searing was. The Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sorrows. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. I will not boast in anything. No gifts, no power, no wisdom. But I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. Why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom. Sing up with this. But this I know with all my heart. His wounds have paid my ransom. Sing out, I stand. I stand before you now. The greatness of your renown. I've heard of the majesty and wonder of you, King of heaven. In humility I bow. And as you love, and wave after wave crashes over me, crashes over me. But you are for us, you are not against us. Champion of heaven, you made a way for all to enter in. Sing, I've heard you calling my name. I have heard you calling my name. I have heard the song of love that you sing. Oh, so I will let you draw me out beyond the shore into your grace. Oh, your grace, as your love, and wave after wave crashes over me, crashes over me. But you are for us, you are not against us. Champion of heaven, you made a way for all to enter in. And you make me brave, you make me brave. You call me out beyond the shore into the waves. Yeah, you make me brave, you make me brave. And no fear can hinder now the love that made a way. Sing that again, you make me. And you make me brave, you make me brave. Yeah, you call me out beyond the shore into the waves. and wave after wave, it crashes over me, crashes over me. But you are for us, you are not against us. Champion of heaven, you made a way because of love, and wave after wave, it crashes over me, crashes over me. For you are for us, you are not against us. Champion of heaven, you made a way for. Champion of heaven, you made a way for all to enter in. God, we just thank you so much for this day. We ask that you speak to us in this message. Lord, we just give you all authority and dominion over our minds, over our thoughts, and let there not be any distractions as we just take in what you need to say to us today. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So we are in a series, like I said before, that we've been doing called Made Brand New. And for those of you who are either watching on the live stream for the first time this morning, or maybe you're here and you haven't been a part of this series yet, I just want to give a quick background of what this series is all about, and just what motivated it. Is I'm a fan of watching like remodel shows on HGTV. And one of the things that's really amazing about that is sometimes, like, there's shows like Fixer Upper, where what they'll do is they'll take a couple to a house that needs to be fixed up. And usually those houses have different kind of problems and those things like that in them. And many times when we walk into those houses, what we see are all the problems. But for people that have those kind of shows or people that do remodels, when they walk into a place like that, they don't see the problems, they see vision. They see the possibilities and the probability of what could be. And it's really cool. Sometimes what they'll do too is with that couple, once the couple have decided which house they want, sometimes what they'll do is they'll take them and while they're in the house, they'll talk about, well, this could be that, and if we open up this could be that, and if we look at that, this could be that, and sometimes they'll even do like a computer relay or a computer picture, a demonstration of what it, I could not find that word at all. Apologize for that. But they'll do like a computer demonstration of the remodel that they have in mind so that you can kind of see what it'll look like. So what happens is when we look at, all we see are problems, but with the person that does remodel, when they look at it, what they see is the vision or possibility of what could be. Now we take that and we apply that to our lives. Because many of us, we struggle when it comes to this idea of God loving us. Because what we do is when we look into the mirror, all we see are the problems. All we see are the challenges. All we see are those issues that hold us back, that are the setbacks. But what we don't realize is when God looks at us, what God sees is what could be, the possibilities of what could be, what's there, based upon what it is that he has done and the way that he has made us. And so it's important for us to, again, make sure that we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we're doing when we look at ourselves? What is it that we see when we look at ourselves? Do we see someone who is forgiven, or do we see someone who's a failure? Do we see someone who is broken, or do we see someone who is restored? Because here's one of my main points for today, and that's simply this, is your life is defined by what you see and how you see it. Your life is defined by what you see and how you see it. So it's important for you to begin to just recognize that aspect of your life. So what is it? What is it that I see? What is it that I see? And ultimately begin to ask yourself, do I see what it is that God sees? Do I see what it is that God sees? Because we all agree that life happens, right? Well, we'd all agree that life happens. And in the process of life happening, we find ourselves, and I would say that every single person in this room, in some way, form, or fashion, is damaged, or at least has been damaged. Every single one of us. Every single one of us. Now, we're either damaged by what life has done to us, or we're damaged by our response to what it is that life has done to us. But we carry that with us. And I want to let you know that here's what I'm hoping. that Encounter is and what we're continuing to build and to be is we want Encounter to be a place where you can come and you can be yourself with your struggles, with your wrestles, and that you can be honest about whatever it is that you're going through. Now, I agree, it probably won't happen in a church service, right? It probably won't happen here. But we do hope that you are building the kind of relationships and friendships, and when you go to one of our small groups that meets during the week, that it's a place where you can go to and that you can be able to talk about your life and your wrestles and your struggles. I grew up going to church. And I'll be honest with you, like a lot of the churches that I grew up in, there's no way you could talk about your problems. Because as soon as you would be what? You'd be judged. You'd be judged. Some person on a spiritual high horse who happens to have a struggle that is not yours will judge you for your struggle, although they may have a struggle that's as bad as yours, right? But there's a struggle, like we go to church and we look good, we feel good, we smell good. And people say, how are you doing? We say, fine. We're fine. And maybe we might even spiritualize it. How are you doing? I'm blessed in the Lord, brother. How are you? We might even spiritualize it. When the truth is, we're broken, we're hurting, and we're struggling. I'll tell you, that's one of the reasons, we have a group of guys that we meet every other week. And one of the things I love about this group of guys is that I can be open. And I could say, hey, this is my frustrations. These are my failures. This is my struggle. This is what I'm going through. And this group of guys will love me and accept me. They don't pull the, well, you're the pastor. You shouldn't be struggling with that. I don't get that kind of judgment. I can be me. I have the freedom to be me. And that's what we want Encounter to be. Because, again, here's the truth, and I mentioned this last week, but I wanted to say it again. What you refuse to face, confront, or admit will define and limit you. What you refuse to face, confront, or admit will define and limit you. So that's why we want to have a place where you can talk about those things and be able to face that. Whatever your damaged area might be, whatever your struggle might be, whatever your setback or your hardship might be. And the reason why it's so important to have that is because, let's be honest, our damaged voice can be pretty loud, can't it? Our damaged voice can be pretty loud. And then not only that, we have society that sometimes reinforces our damaged voice. What do I mean by that? How many of you heard this one? Well, boys will be boys. Boys will be, which I hate. That's one of the most sexist statements, because basically, boys to boys means, boys will be boys mean, let's go out and boys just show their wild oats. But if a woman does the same thing, now she's looked at differently, right? But boys will be boys. And so because of that, we have this thing where we can be stuck in our struggle. Or how about this one? Once a cheater, always a cheater. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Those are the kind of things that our society says. And so we feel pigeonholed because of our damage. Or maybe you've been given a title because of your struggle. What do I mean by that? Addict, slut. I mean, we can go through the list of the different titles that we have put on us because of whatever it is that our struggle may be. And then what happens again is we look in the mirror and that's what we see. That's what we see. All we see is our struggle. And the weird thing is you may have stepped out of your struggle for years. It may have been years since you slept with someone. But still, when you look at the mirror, what you see is that title. You see that title. And so what we want to do over the course of this series is we want to be able to see that this adage is not true. What adage is that? A leopard can't change his spots. Is that another one that we hear sometimes too? A leopard can't change his spots. That's not true. God can. If you allow him to come in, he can redeem you and he can change you. And again, what we're doing over the course of this series is we're hoping that we can bring our damaged areas before God so that we can begin to experience his healing in our lives, so that we can begin to see freedom and growth happen in our lives. So we talked about this. We kind of set this up last week, and we're going to continue this week. So last week we talked about and introduced in the message that we're going to talk about a guy named Mephibosheth this week. How many of you have heard of Mephibosheth? If you've heard of Mephibosheth, raise your hand. Yeah, I know it wouldn't be a lot of you. I know it wouldn't be a lot of you. It's kind of like one of those things in the Bible, like, and you just keep reading past it because I can't say that name, you know. But Mephibosheth. Now, what I want to do is I want to give you a background of his story so we can kind of go into it. So what I wanted to do as well is sometimes I think it helps when you can put like a picture with the face, or a face with the picture or a face with the story. So that way when it goes on, you can kind of think, and it's kind of fun for me. Sometimes when I read the Bible, I'll put certain faces in places that makes it kind of fun for me. So we'll go into Mephibosheth's history. So history. So if you say Mephibosheth and history very close, it comes out history. So the first one that I wanted to show is this guy here. Okay? So Mephibosheth's grandfather is a guy named Saul. Now, doesn't that look like a Saul to you? You know? That looks like a Saul to you. And Saul was this guy that he looked like someone who would be a leader. He looked like someone who would be a leader. So what happens is Israel comes to God and says, hey, we want a king. And God says, I am your king. And what God wanted Israel to be was the first theocracy. So God said, I'll be your king. And Israel's like, that's nice, but we want a king like everybody else. And so God's like, all right, if you get a king, he's going to lead to your demise. And they're like, that's okay. We want a king. So God's like, all right. So he gave them Saul. And when Saul first started, he was doing the right things. He was on the right path. But then somewhere along the lines, his humanity got in the way. And because of his choices, he lost his anointing. Now, Saul had a son, or he lost his chosen place. Now Saul had a son. His son's name was Jonathan. And so I kind of picture Jonathan as looking like that, you know? As picture like Heidi, I'm here. I'm here, honey. I'm here. So just here, ladies, just go ahead and engage for a minute. I'll give you your chance. So people have told me I kind of look like him. Hey, you don't have to. See, that's why I married her. That's why I married her. She lies to me and makes me feel better about myself. But no, so he had a son named Jonathan. And Jonathan was a guy that really wanted to follow God as well. And Jonathan knew that he could look at his dad and he could see that where God's hand was on his dad at one point, but he could also begin to see some things in his dad was starting to change. His dad was starting to change. Now, in the Bible, it also talks about Jonathan's best friend. He had a hanging buddy. So when I think about Jonathan's best friend, I kind of think about this guy. You know, Thor. You know, but that guy. I was working out, and my arms were so Thor. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, just stop. Just stop. Quit while you're behind. All right. So, but David was Jonathan's best friend. So it's funny because I knew that Idris would be a look for my wife, and my daughter is not here today but if she were here, she'd be all over Chris Hemsworth right now. She'd be like, I would have lost her. But you think about David, and David and Jonathan were best friends. They were best friends. And also, here's what's unique about David is God had a unique calling on David's life. Where once Saul lost his role, he kind of lost his direction, where he was going in. God said, you know what, that's not the guy that's going to continue to be the king of my nation. And so he picked a new guy. He picked David. But Saul was still alive, you know, at this point. Now, there's a relationship between David and Jonathan that we're going to explore and we're going to talk about in a minute. But now, who is Mephibosheth? So here's where we'll get to that. It says in 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4, Saul's son Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth, who was crippled as a child. He was 5 years old when the report came from Jezreel that Saul and Jonathan had been killed in battle. When the child's nurse heard the news, she picked him up and fled. But as she hurried away, she dropped him, and he became crippled. So when I think of Mephibosheth, here's the picture that I think of with Mephibosheth. So there you go, Professor X for you guys. For those of you who are, well, it's a Marvel thing. But that's the picture that I think of when I think of Mephibosheth. Now here's the thing that I recognize is many of you are like Mephibosheth in this sense that you've been damaged in your life, but the damage that you've experienced in your life is not your fault. It's not your fault. Many of us in this room are damaged because of what someone else has done to us. Maybe someone abandoned us. Maybe someone abused us. Maybe someone rejected us. Maybe someone ignored us. Maybe someone put us down. Maybe someone attacked us. But there was someone who did something to us that we're damaged by. Now, here's the part that's tougher that I think sometimes that we wrestle with is some of us are damaged, but the person that damaged us didn't intend to damage us. Some of us are damaged, but the person who damaged us didn't intend to damage us. Like with Mephibosheth, like the call goes out. Saul and Jonathan are dead. Oh my goodness, what does this mean for all of his sons? And so she picks up this boy and she starts running with him. And then her size 14 shoe gets in the way. And she trips and she falls or something like that and she drops him. Imagine the guilt that you live with from that point forward. That you have basically you've crippled. You crippled this kid. You paralyzed this kid. Imagine the weight of carrying that. But she was trying to do what was best. Some of us have been hurt because maybe you had a dad, and your dad didn't want you to have the same struggles that he had in his life, the same wrestles that he had in his life. And so what your dad did was your dad worked and worked and worked and worked. His heart was in the right place by wanting to give you, put you in a position where you didn't struggle in your life like he struggled. But as a result of overworking, he wasn't at your games. He wasn't at your plays. He wasn't involved in your life. Maybe you had a mom, and you had a helicopter mom. And the goal of your mom was she's just trying to protect you from pain and going through things in your life. But because your mom was always there for you, protecting you and watching over you, you've become codependent because of your mom always being there for you. Again, her heart was in the right place, but what happens is you got damaged even though she was trying to protect you. That happens sometimes. Or what about this? You and your brother are playing and just hanging out and having fun. And your brother just joking around, because you know how brothers do. Brothers and sisters, we joke around with each other, right? And we call each other's names. That's just kind of part of the deal about being a brother-sister. But what your brother does is your brother looks at you and he calls you fat. And he meant it as a joke. But something locked in. Because maybe you were already starting to struggle with your body image. And ever since then, you have wrestled with looking in the mirror and what is it that you see. Maybe you were joking around with your sister, and your sister called you stupid or dumb. And she wasn't trying to hurt your feelings, just having fun, just sisterly fun. But ever since that moment, you feel stupid. You feel dumb. So sometimes we're damaged in our lives, not purposefully. And I think that's the part that we wrestle with. Is because we realize, like, my mom wasn't trying to hurt me, but I still carry this pain, and I feel anger against my mom. I feel anger against my dad. I feel anger against this person when I feel like I shouldn't have it, but I do have it, and I'm damaged. And so we find ourselves wrestling and struggling with this as well. Because what is associated with that damage is usually some type of loss. And I want to encourage you, put yourself in Mephibosheth's shoes. Put yourself in his shoes. In one moment, in one instant, he was the grandson of the king. The grandson of the king, whose son would eventually become king, who would possibly maybe open the door for him to become king one day. And in one instant, royalty is lost. In one instant, his future is lost. It's lost. Then not only that, they fled from Saul's compound. They fled from everything that he had known growing up. Everything that he had known, his home, the financial benefits of that. And now he's in this place, and we're going to talk about where he ends up at, but he's in this place where he's suffering now because of it. Where it's not even close. So he lost everything. He lost it all. But then, not only that, he was healthy, running around, doing what boys do. And in that moment, that's lost too. So when you talk about being damaged and the consequences that come along with that damage, Mephibosheth understands what it is that you're wrestling with, what it is that you're going through, what it is that you're dealing with. Because he's experienced that loss as well. But here's the thing. This story is not just about damage, is it? We're talking about restoration. We're talking about being made new. That's what this series is about. And so what we're going to do from this point forward is we're going to allow Mephibosheth to be representative of us who are damaged, who are broken. And then we're going to look at David, and we're going to allow David to be representative of God's grace and mercy that is given to us. Because, and here's the main point of the message, and if you want to write this down, but this is the main point of the message. God can reconstruct what the devil, lives, and others destruct. God can reconstruct what the devil, life, and others destruct. He can do that. And that's what this message is about, and that's what the rest of this series is about. It's what God can do in that place. So now, let's fast forward. Mephibosheth is gone. Mephibosheth is gone. The family's gone. Everything's gone. And now David has been installed as the king of Israel at this point. He's now the king. And here's what it says in 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 1. One day, David asked, "Is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar, Chris Hemsworth and Idris, remember, they were really great friends. They were best friends with one another. And so there's this one point where Samuel Jackson, Saul begins to realize that I don't have it anymore. I don't have it anymore. And now he looks at David, and everything that David does is successful. Matter of fact, the people started singing songs about David. And the songs would be like, hey, Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. I don't know what the rhythm was. I'm just kind of jazzing it up for you guys. But yeah, so Saul would hear this, and it would blow it like, what? What are they saying about him? And so he begins to see David as a threat, so much so that he starts to do things to try to take the life of David. And so David goes to his buddy Jonathan, and he says to Jonathan, hey man, your dad's trying to kill me. And Jonathan's like, nah, dude, you're just being too sensitive. He's like, no, your dad is really trying to kill me. And so they came up with this scheme to try to figure out if that were really the case. They came up with this scheme. And in the scheme, it will reveal what Saul really felt about David. But as they were coming up with the scheme, here's what they said in conversation with each other. This is really powerful. In 1 Samuel chapter 20, verses 13 through 15, it says, but if he, talking about Saul, if he is angry and wants you killed, may the Lord strike me. So this is Jonathan talking. May the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you so you can escape and live. May the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father. So you catch that? So Jonathan recognizes my dad's lost it. My dad's lost it. And he also recognizes there's something special about David. It goes on to say, and may you treat me with the faithful love of the Lord as long as I live. But if I die, treat my family with faithful love, even when the Lord destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth. From the face of the earth. So then, it goes on, they do their test, they do their thing, and then they find out that Saul is trying to kill David. So Jonathan comes out, they hug one another, and then David takes off. But the interesting thing is, if you continue to read the story, it's not like Saul stops trying to kill David. Like he continues to hunt David down. He brings his armies after David. He goes after him. He goes after him. So what I'm trying to say is, if there's anyone who had the right to renege on his deal, to say, hey, I made that promise, but do your dad. Your dad. If there's anyone that had a right to renege on his promise, it would have been David. It would have been David. But what David does, and this is really powerful, and I really want us to lean into this as well, is what David does is David taps into a kindness. And that kindness is driven by a promise. And notice what David said is there's someone that I can show God's kindness to. I can show God's kindness to. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and read 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 3. The king asked him, because what happened is the king has summoned a guy named Ziba, who happens to be Saul's servant. So he summons him, and here's what happens. Then the king asked him, is anyone still alive from Saul's family? If so, I want to show God's kindness to them. God's kindness. Not my kindness. God's kindness. Ziba replied, yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet. He's crippled in both feet. So now as we look at this, and this exchange that is happening in this conversation that's going on, there's some things I really want you to catch and that you should grab a hold of. But before we get there, as we're looking at this, David says, I want to show God's kindness. I want to show God's love, God's mercy, God's kindness. You know, sometimes, being honest, forgiveness seems impossible, doesn't it? Based upon the level of hurt, the capacity of the pain, the gravity and the weight of what someone has done to you, it seems impossible. That's when we have to learn how to try to tap into what David tapped into. Not my kindness, because you know my last nerve. It's God's kindness. How can I find that kind of grace to be demonstrated in this moment? But David talks to Ziba, that's an interesting name, isn't it? Ziba. It just only needs an R. Zebra. Okay. All right, my jokes are off today. Actually, probably not today. Some of you go, okay. Tell the devil, no, not today. But David talks to Ziba, and Ziba introduces Mephibosheth. But do you know what did you catch what he said? Oh, there's Jonathan, but his son's crippled. He doesn't even say Mephibosheth's name. He doesn't even say his name. He identifies him by his damage. He doesn't even say his name. Now, come on. How many of us have experienced that? Where someone says you, and they point you out to someone else. They don't point you out by your name. They point you out by your damage. Oh, you know, don't talk to him, and he's messed up. They don't identify you by your name, they identify you by your damage. Now, here's the thing that's really interesting as well. I looked up Mephibosheth, because I just want to know, because many times in the Bible they have names, and the names have meaning, so it's kind of fun to look at those names. And Mephibosheth means, his name literally means this, from the mouth of shame. Like, Dad, you couldn't pick a better name. Because it's almost like his name predicted his future. From the mouth of shame. So again, here's this guy that's not even identified by his name, he's identified by his damage. And many times, think about it this way, when someone identifies you by your damage, are they trying to qualify you or are they trying to disqualify you? All right, they're trying to disqualify you. So basically in saying this, he's saying, hey, here's this guy, but really he's not worth your time. He's crippled. He has nothing to offer to you. He has nothing to offer your kingdom. He has nothing to offer. Now, not only do we have that, it says in verse 4, where is he? David asked, where is he? The king asked, in Lodabar, Ziba told him, at the home of Machir, son of Ameliel. So now think about this. He's at this place called Lodabar. Lodabar. Now, why is that so significant? In Hebrew, the word lo means no. Debar means thing. No thing. He's at the place of what? Nothing. So he went to the place of something, of everything, possibly being the future king of Israel, to where now he's at the place of what? Nothing. Nothing. It says this, and I wanted to read this. This is from one of the commentaries I do research from sometimes. It says, of Lodabar, nothing is known, but it must have been east of Jordan. That's it. That's the description. Nothing is known. Nothing is known. I'm from Kentucky, originally. And I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother was involved in this organization where she would go to just different churches. And sometimes what we would do, I remember, is I would be in the back of the car, and we would drive from the city of Louisville. And you're driving around in the city all around. It's like, oh, this is great. This is fun. And then all of a sudden, like, chirp, chirp, chirp. You're looking around, and all you see are trees. And you're in the back roads. And it's kind of scary in those back roads, because this is the 70s. So it's kind of scary on those back roads. You didn't know what was going to come out. And being a black person on those back roads, man, it's scary. It's risky. But my grandmother knew that we had to get to this place because she wanted to be a blessing there. And in the back of the car, I didn't really get how dangerous the journey was. But I just knew, like, man, we're going. And then we show up at these places. And we show up at this, like, all of a sudden it's like tree, 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 tree. And then the road opens up, and then there's like one flashing light. And that's it. And then there's one church in this place. And we're in the middle of this town where nobody would. And so that's what I kind of picture Lodabar is like. Like, this is a place where you really don't want to go to. You don't want to be a part. You're not interested. You're just not. So that's where Mephibosheth is in this place. So now he has a name that means from the mouth of shame, and he's at the place of nothing. And not only that, he's now identified by the fact that he is crippled. How many of us identify with that in our damage? Because sometimes that's how we've been defined by our damage, right? With our damage, we've been defined as having no value, having no name, having no place, having nothing to offer. That's what our damage does to us sometimes. But I love it because, again, as we said before, God can reconstruct what the devil, life, or others destruct. God can do that. So with that in mind, in 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 3, it says, then the king asked him, I want to go back to that question again, is anyone still alive from Saul's family? If so, I want to show God's kindness to them. Ziba replied, yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet. So you know what David is doing in this point? He's pursuing. He's looking. He wants to find someone to bless because he made a promise to Jonathan. So he's going to follow through and he's going to show God's kindness. Now think about this. He's showing God's kindness to someone who's potentially an enemy. He's showing God's kindness to someone who could try to lay claim that I really should be the king of this nation. He's taking that risk. He's showing God's kindness to an enemy. And I really want you to understand this because I think sometimes, again, we wrestle with, why would God love me? Why would he love me? Well, in Romans chapter 5, we are reminded that God, it talks about how it's incredible when someone is willing to lay down their life for a friend. But it's even more incredible when someone is willing to lay down a life for an enemy. And here's the truth. Every single one of us were enemies of God. Every single one of us. When Jesus Christ died on the cross, we were still his enemy. We were still his enemy. We didn't care about Christ. We didn't care about this life. We didn't care about our sin. We didn't care about judgment. We didn't care about God. But God cared about us. And so if you look at yourself and think, I'm not qualified, no, he died for you when you were at your worst. When you were his enemy, he died for you. That's the kind of kindness that David is showing right now to Mephibosheth. He's showing kindness to a potential enemy. So again, I just want to say that none of us are disqualified from the incredible love that God has for us. Again, God can reconstruct what the devil, life, or others destruct. I'm in a pastor's group, and we meet once a month. And in our last meeting, we were talking about the incredible, because it was shortly after Easter. We were actually meeting at an Eastern Orthodox church here in Torrance, a Christian church, which is really ornate, and it's just really beautiful. But we were meeting there, and so we were just talking about, and so we were all going around the table, and we were talking about God's incredible grace. And there is this one pastor that, there's always that one pastor, and he's actually about to retire. So he's an older guy, the silver hair, It's like there's certain people you just look at and go, wisdom. And he says, yes, there's an old Presbyterian hymn. And he quoted it. And so I wanted to bring that to you today because I love the words. It says, I sought the Lord, and afterward I knew. He moved my soul to seek him, seeking me. I love that. He moved my soul to seek him, seeking me. In other words, he's already seeking me. And so he's just moving me to seek the seeker. So I want you to know that God is pursuing you because he wants to show his kindness to you, his mercy to you, his forgiveness to you. He's pursuing you so that you can know his love. And I love this. And then it says, and this is beautiful, 2 Samuel chapter 9, verses 5 and 6. So David sent for him and brought him from Machir's home. His name was Mephibosheth. He was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. And David said, greetings, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth replied, I am your servant. God will reconstruct what the devil, life, or others destruct. We could throw ourselves in with others. Destruct. For the first time, David doesn't call him by his damage. David calls him by his what? His name. David calls him by his name. Now that part where it says that he bowed low to the ground in deep respect, what it really, that word respect there actually means fear. That Mephibosheth was afraid for his life in this moment. And think about that. What would you think? What would you think? Here's the king, and here's this guy my grandfather tried to kill on multiple occasions. And now my grandfather's dead. My father's dead. I could be in line to be king. And typically back in those days when someone was a threat to your throne, what you would do is you would eliminate the threat. So you know Mephibosheth had to be afraid. Because is this the point where David kills me? Is this the point? But he comes before him. And I love that. Mephibosheth says, I am your servant. In other words, I kneel before you, I bow before you, and I make myself available to whatever you want to do. To whatever you want to do. If you want to be healed, that's the perspective that we need to have towards God. That we come and we kneel before him and we say, God, I make myself available to you to do whatever you want to do. To do whatever you want to do. But I love what happens in this passage. And then what I love by this, in James chapter 4, verse 10, it tells us this. It says, Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. He will lift you up in honor. So what happens? It says in 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 7, don't be afraid, David said. I intend to show you kindness. I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise to your father Jonathan. I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table. And you will eat. So here's the name of this message is Come to the Table. Come to the table. Damage it all. Come to the table. Broken it all. Come to the table. Because here's what God says. God says, I have restored you and I have brought you to my kingdom. And I have restored to you everything that I desired to place upon you when I originally created you. And not only that, I invite you to have dinner with me at the king's table. Damage it all. Now notice that when Mephibosheth would come to the table, were his legs healed? No. He was invited to come to the table, damage and all. Damage and all. Make sure you come next week as we continue to dig into Mephibosheth and his relationship with David to see where this goes. Make sure you come back next week because I think you're going to be really encouraged by what we talk about as we continue this series. But I really want you to just understand the incredible grace that God wants to show to you. He wants you, and he wants to invite you to his table. Why did Jesus Christ come and die on the cross and rise again? Because the Father wants to invite you to his table. To his table. And I love that. Again, there's a passage in Revelation that talks about, Jesus says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. And he says, if anyone will open the door, I will come in. For those of you that know the verse, I will come in and I will do what? I will sup with him. I will eat with him. And again, back in biblical times, the highest form of friendship that you could have with someone is to eat with someone. That's what God's inviting you to. So I want to invite you. Come to the table. Father, I just want to pray that we are able to see beyond our brokenness, to see beyond our wrestles and our struggles, to see beyond our setbacks. And Lord, that we will embrace the calling that you've placed upon our lives. Father, there's no doubt that we're damaged. There's no doubt about that. But the beauty of that, Father, is that you say, bring your damage to me because I desire to heal you and renew you. I desire to build you and strengthen you. I invite you to come and sit and eat at the table with me. So, Lord, I just pray that today will be the day that we do that. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen.
You go before I know that you've even gone to win my war. You come back with the head of my enemy. You come back and you call it my victory. Oh. becomes my greatest defense. It leads me from the dry wilderness, and all I did was praise. All I did was worship. All I did was bow down. All I did was stay still. And hallelujah, you have saved me so much better your way. And hallelujah, great defender, so much better your way. And you know before I do where my heart can seek to find your truth. Your mercy is the shade I'm living in, and you restore my faith and hope again. And all I did was praise, and all I did was worship, and all I did was bow down, Lord. So all I did was stay still. And hallelujah, you have saved me so much better your way. And hallelujah, great defender, so much better your way. And hallelujah, you have saved me so much better your way. And hallelujah, great defender, so much better your way. And when I thought I lost me, you knew where I left me. You reintroduced me to your love. You picked up all my pieces, put me back together. You are the defender of my heart. And when I thought I lost me, you knew where I left me. You reintroduced me to your love. You picked up all my pieces, put me back together. You are the defender of my heart. And hallelujah, you have saved me so much better this way. And hallelujah, great defender, so much better this way. Hallelujah. And hallelujah, you have saved me so much better your way. And hallelujah, great defender, so much better your way. And all I did was praise. All
I'm just gonna stay still.
So it's my prayer that, again, this will be the morning that you say yes. It's my prayer that we will be able to move beyond that place where our damaged selves still have a voice in us and in our struggles and in our wrestles. That we will be able to recognize, again, that God fully invites us, wrestle, struggle, and all to the table. And it's at the conversations, at the table, that's where our lives are changed. I think a lot of us, what we try to do first is, let me clean myself up. You know, like we have when a guest comes over, right? We clean the house up. We try to clean ourselves up before we get to God's table. And God is saying, no. Just come, sit, and eat. And then in our conversations, that's when your life will change. So again, Father, I just pray that this morning would be one that we say yes to you. Yes to what you've called us to do. Yes to the hope that you offer. And I simply ask in your name. Amen. So here's what I want to encourage you to do this week, is go through and write down your damaged areas. Just write them down. And then once you figure out what those are, take a pencil and then just start crossing a line through each one. Because God no longer calls you by your damage. He calls you by your name. So again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Again, for those of you that want to support Encounter financially, there's boxes on the back that you can throw your offering in. For those of you that are watching on the live stream, there's a link that's in the live stream description. You can click that and be able to give a support Encounter that way. But again, thank you so much. And again, like I said before, don't miss next week. So with that in mind, Encounter is about three things. Love up, that's about madly and passionately in love with God. Love out, let's make a commitment to truly love others. And love in, let's continue to, as we continue to do that, we'll learn that much more that we love about ourselves. So take care. God bless you. And we'll see you guys next week.
I just want to invite you guys to stand and sing this last song with us. Sing with fire in our eyes. With fire in our eyes, our lives alive. Your love untamed is blazing out. The streets will glow forever bright. Your glory's breaking through the night. You will never fade away.
pushing through.